What's up, guys? 2-1 yesterday. I'll take it. Winning day. Pittsburgh Pirates, they were winning after the first five, so the starting pitching matchup did go my way, although it was pretty close, and then they wound up having to win in extra innings. I think they actually fell behind in the 10th inning by 1 run and then won with 2 runs on a walk-off, so maybe a little bit lucky there. It was a close game. Pittsburgh, I think, still was the better team in the game, though. It was a close game, close win. The total did not win. The Mets, Washington, that was looking like it was going to be close too, with Washington was being held completely off the scoreboard. I think it was like 5-0 in the middle of the game, and then Washington had a barrage of runs over the, 6th, 7th inning, whenever that was, 6th through 8th maybe, and pushed that thing over. And then the easy win on Houston, which a lot of that came down to the bullpens. Toronto's bullpen, man, they can't seem to get it together. That game was actually fairly close up until like the 6th inning or so, until the bullpens came in, and then Houston ran away with it. It's a 2-1 day. I'll take it. We move on to today. There are a few leans that I have today that I'm not going to actually play. Today's card is pretty difficult, man. I'm only making one play here today. There's a lot going on with some of these games. I do somewhat lean to an under in San Diego, Texas, although it seems like a little bit dangerous, especially with a Texas team that can hit a little bit, and it being in Texas, which is kind of a more offensive place to play. But that line has gone down from 8 juice to the over down to 7.5 juice to the under. So we do see significant movement coming in on the under on that one. 58% of the tickets on the under, 82% of the cash on the under. So it does look like the smarter money is coming in on the under in that one. That's Michael King against Max Scherzer. Scherzer has only made 2 starts so far this season since he's come back from injury, and he's done pretty well, but he hasn't gone that deep into those games yet, so that kind of concerns me a little bit too with the bullpen usage yesterday. It wasn't like nothing for these two teams yesterday, so that kind of concerns me as well. Now that you're looking at playing under 7.5 juice to the under, it's a little bit dicey, but I think Scherzer does have pretty good numbers against San Diego in his career. I mean, he has good numbers against most teams, really, and Michael King has been really good this year, especially with his strikeout rate. That's been really high, but he's shown some glimpses of struggling a little bit and being too wild and whatever, and his numbers against Texas are kind of, I would say, more in the mediocre range. They hit like 260 off him, so I'm just going to kind of stay away from that one. I could see playing an over in Anaheim, Oakland, just because both of those pitchers haven't been pitching well. In Roansy Contreras, I don't know, how do you pronounce his name? Roansy Contreras and JP Sears. Neither of them have good numbers against the opposing lineup, so the sample sizes are a little bit small, but they've both been struggling pitchers, so I do lean to an over in that one. That's gone up from 8.5 to 9 juice to the under, so up just a little bit, slightly. 76% of tickets on the under, but 95% of the on the over, but 95% of the cash on the over. So even though the over is somehow public in an Oakland Anaheim game, it does look like more of the money still is actually coming in on the over. So something to note. I mean, I just found that to be a little bit interesting. And I kind of actually sort of liked potentially an under in Arizona against LA, because it's Zach Gallen against Landon Knack. And Zach Gallen's been pretty, I mean, he just came off the DL, but he's just a pretty good pitcher for Arizona. He's done pretty well in his history against the Dodgers. Landon Knack is a young pitcher for the Dodgers, and he's off to having a pretty good season so far. But Arizona is one of the few teams that actually has faced him once already. So maybe that puts Knack at a slight disadvantage in that one, but he might be good enough that it doesn't matter as much. And he did well the first time out against Arizona, though, like I said, now they are familiar with him, so that kind of removes that one edge that he had with the unfamiliarity aspect of it. That line looks like it's going against the under, though. It was 8.5 juice to the under, and it looks like it's now just straight 8.5 with 65% of the tickets on the over, but 93% of the cash on the over. So that one, the market looks against it, but just interesting nonetheless. I was thinking about maybe playing the under in that one as well, but I'm not going to do that. And then I'll just mention probably the best pitching matchup on the board here is Baltimore and Seattle. Could be if you like pitching matchups, this could be an interesting game with Corbin Burns against Bryce Miller. Both of those guys have been dealing it. Debatably, they're both the best starter on their individual team. Well, Burns is definitely the best starter on Baltimore. Seattle has like 3 pretty good starters in the rotation. And Bryce Miller is certainly one of them, and he might be their best as well. So that's an interesting matchup there between Baltimore and Seattle. Baltimore actually has gone up from minus 128 to minus 142, which I can kind of see why, because the starting pitching isn't the only thing getting involved there. Even though I think both these pitchers actually have decent stats against the opposing lineups. I think Burns really dominates Seattle, but of course, Baltimore also has a better offense than Seattle quite significantly. So I think that's what's giving them the edge in the line there, although Baltimore is a public road favorite there too. So that one I could also see playing an under, really, because the pitching matchup is so insane. But yeah, you're having to play under 7, but it's actually gone up from 7 to 7, juiced to the over. 73% of the tickets on the over and 65% of the cash on the over. So it looks like it is public on the over in that one, which is kind of weird because I think that's one of the games on the board that's kind of an obvious pitching duel, but I don't know. We'll see. And then I think both of those staffs, I think, kind of used some of their bullpens yesterday as well. What's the game I'm actually going to be on? Because it's not one of the games I just talked about already. Those are just a bunch of leans. I see strong market indicators on this one, and I'm coming in on it as well, even though I think we missed the best numbers on this. I'm taking the San Francisco Giants against the Atlanta Braves. I like the starting pitching matchup here well enough, and I think just the way the market looks, but also the situation, what the bullpens did yesterday. I like it full game on San Francisco here. Atlanta looks like they opened minus 144, and they're already down to minus 112. So I think we've seen significant money coming in on the San Francisco side. So hopefully I'm not like chasing steam here and taking the worst of it. You can still get San Francisco at an underdog price right now, though. And you're having to take it at close to like a pick the winner scenario, though. Now I think plus 105, I think is kind of the best you can do now. San Francisco actually is teetering on being a favorite in the first 5 innings, which is really crazy too. 60% of the cash on San Francisco, but 62% of the tickets over on the other side on Atlanta. So it looks like we have a pretty somewhat public Atlanta team. Reverse line movement going heavily against them, and a lot of the cash coming in on San Francisco. So unfortunately, I'm chasing a little bit, but you can still get San Francisco at an underdog price, which I think is decent enough to make a play on this because I think they have basically all of the advantages in this game, except obviously Atlanta does have the better offense. But I think everything else kind of goes to San Francisco in this one. Atlanta lost the first game of the series 5-3. Giants have been playing decently competitively, and then Atlanta won yesterday 3-1. But Atlanta did have to use like the back end of their bullpen after Chris Sale had a pretty good start. Atlanta used 3 of their best relievers basically to hold off the Giants in that one, whereas the Giants only used 2 relievers, and it was more like they kind of used them to, I think, kind of chew up some innings at the end there. So the Giants really saved the best of their bullpen, and the Braves used the best of theirs. So even though I think the Braves do have the better overall bullpen, the Braves, the usable bullpen today, the available bullpen, I think that becomes more of a wash and maybe goes against Atlanta a little bit just because they use their best relievers, including Iglesias, their closer, yesterday. So those guys will be unavailable today. So I think that kind of shifts the tide a little bit as far as the bullpens are concerned. And then looking at the starting pitching matchup, I much prefer San Francisco here. And obviously the books are telling you a lot of this is the starting pitching matchup because they are lining San Francisco as a favorite in the first 5 innings and an underdog in the full game. But I'm still taking full game because of the bullpen scenario. I think still kind of leans to the Giants here. But Logan Webb is pitching for San Francisco. And he's a guy that I haven't really wanted to play on that often, but you can't really argue with what the stats are that he's putting up this year, man. A 3.12 ERA, 1.22 whip. That's all pretty good. He's coming off another good start where he beat the Dodgers. But does that mean he's going to be in a letdown spot? I don't think so. I don't think you can have a letdown spot. Even if you do beat the Dodgers, one of the best teams in baseball, and your divisional rival, you're facing another one of the best teams in baseball today in the Atlanta Braves. So I don't think he's just going to suffer a letdown spot. And Logan Webb has he's been consistent throughout the entire year, man. He had one bad start where he gave up 5 earned runs against the Dodgers. And other than that, he's allowed 4 or fewer earned runs in every one of his starts. He's allowed 4 against Philly and the Yankees and St. Louis. So 2 of those 3 are pretty good hitting teams. Oh, and Boston, sorry. So 4 games. All the rest of the starts, he's allowed 3 or fewer earned runs. And he's only allowed 3 earned runs once. So he's allowed 2 or fewer earned runs in all but 6 of his starts or something. So 12 out of 18 of the starts, whatever I just said, something like that. So he's been consistently good. He's got a 97 to 26 strikeout walk ratio, so that's not bad either. Even though he's not a huge strikeout guy because that is in 112 and a third innings. But the amount of innings tells you he's going pretty deep into games, man. He's gone 6 innings in all of his starts, going all the way back to that Philadelphia start was the last game where he didn't go at least 6 innings. May 5th, he didn't do well against Philadelphia. Every start from then on, he's gone either 6 or 7 innings exactly. So they seem to like to let him finish an inning and then take him out. So it seems likely that he pretty much either goes 6 or 7 innings in basically all of these games. We'll see what he does against another good offense, though, in Atlanta. But also, he's allowed 111 hits in those 112 and a third innings. So he's going deep into games, throwing a lot of innings. His strikeout rate is low, like I said, but he's never really been a huge strikeout guy, but he's limiting the damage, only having allowed 5 home runs. 26 walks isn't that high in that amount of innings, and he's allowed fewer than 1 hit per inning, so that's all good. I mean, as you can see, his whip is fairly low, 1.22, and a good ERA at 3.12. And Atlanta, we do have a big sample size here against Atlanta, specifically against their hitters. Logan Webb has actually done well against these Atlanta hitters. Big sample size. They're 21 for 97 off him with 5 doubles, 2 home runs, 10 RBIs. He's got a 25 to 4 strikeout walk ratio against them. That amounts to a 216 batting average and 577 OPS. So Atlanta's hitting stats are weak against Logan Webb, man. So he's done pretty well. And I much prefer him to the guy who's opposing him here in Charlie Morton, whose stats are a little bit more iffy. And Charlie Morton's a 40-year-old guy, man. It's like, he's coming towards the end of his career, even though he is pitching pretty successfully this year still with a 3.89 ERA, a 1.25 whip is getting a little bit into the high realm, I would say. He's got 87 strikeouts in 85 and 2/3 innings, so that is actually good, and only 71 hits allowed, so he's been tough to hit, but he's also walked 36. Although, like Webb, he hasn't allowed that many home runs, 7 home runs. He's not going as deep into games for the most part as Webb does, so Webb is a workhorse, man. Webb goes deep into these games. Morton, getting a little bit older, can't quite do that, although Morton's gone at least 5 in every start since the beginning of June, so he has pitched pretty well. His strikeout rate, decently high, more than 1 per inning, but that walk number at 36, pretty high, so that's bringing his whip up a little bit. In June, a 28 to 13 strikeout walk ratio doesn't look that good to me either in 29 innings, although he only allowed 19 hits. But I would say he faced some weak offenses in the month of June in Oakland, Tampa, Pittsburgh, which was his most recent start, which was a very successful start. Didn't do well against the Yankees or Washington in the month of June. He's coming off a start where he threw over 100 pitches, and it seems like when he does throw over 100 pitches, he doesn't actually do that well the next time out. So he did that against the Mets in April, and he came back the next start and had a bad start against Miami. Well, he allowed 6 runs against Miami, even though he had an 8-1 strikeout walk ratio, only threw 79 pitches in it. So he didn't do well in that one. He threw 100 pitches against Washington, a bad start where he gave up 8 runs, but he did pitch okay in the game after that against Oakland. He had a 6-inning 1-hit shutout, but he also walked 5 guys against Oakland. Then against Tampa, he threw over 100 pitches, and he came back and didn't pitch well against the Yankees and gave up 5 earned runs in 5 2/3. So 2 out of the 3 starts, the start after he threw 100 pitches, he didn't do very well. And you could argue he didn't do well in the Oakland game either with 5 walks. So he became a little bit wild in those starts and didn't quite have that much on him. And I wonder if that might be the case coming into this game too, where he's coming off a good 6 1/3 inning, 3-hit shutout, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk against Pittsburgh, where he threw again over 100 pitches. So he might be in line to have a bit of regression here. And he's alternated good and bad starts for kind of a while, man, going all the way back to like the Cubs game on May 15th, bad start. Then he had a good start the next time out against the Cubs, bad start the next game against Washington, good start arguably against Oakland after that, bad start the next time out against Washington, good against Tampa, then bad against the Yankees, then good against Pittsburgh. So he's doing this thing where he's sort of alternating good and bad. And even though some of those bad ones were against the better offenses, you can kind of see like a trend there. And it does kind of make sense with starting pitchers. Like they could like put in a big effort one day and have a really good start and then kind of have like a little bit of a regression in the next start and have a little bit of a letdown. And then when they don't do as well in that start, then they're ready again and they do better the next time out. So you do see that with a lot of starting pitchers. And Morton, his numbers against the Giants are decently good. They're only 17 for 72 off him lifetime, but with 6 doubles, a triple, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, and a 14-6 strikeout walk ratio. So kind of high number of walks. It is a 236 batting average, so that's pretty low. He's held the Giants hitting down to 236, but the OPS starts to get into somewhat higher territory. It's 767 with all those extra base hits and walks that he's allowed. So Webb has been the more successful of these two pitchers overall. Webb is the younger pitcher. He's the better pitcher this year, and he's been the more successful against the opposing lineup here. Webb has been better against Atlanta, even though their lineup is good. And then Morton has been against San Francisco. And like I said, Morton kind of coming to the end of his career, too. And it looks like we have significant market movement on this game, too. So that's the only play today, man. Jumping in, agreeing with the market here, even though we're getting not the best price on it at this point. But if you can get San Francisco, it's still like an underdog price. That's what I'm going to do, and hopefully they win the game, man. Plus 105. I don't mind if you want to play them first 5 innings, too, and just go with the starting pitching matchup, but I do think that Atlanta's bullpen actually kind of gets balanced out, like I said, because of the usage they had yesterday with their best relievers all coming into the game yesterday. But I don't mind playing San Francisco like minus 105 in the first 5 either. So San Francisco plus 105 full game is my play. That's the only play today. Have a good one, man. Happy 4th of July. Celebrate. Start having some cookouts, man. Have some burgers, some dogs, some beer. Shoot off some fireworks. Celebrate the independence of your nation by blowing up a small part of it. Let's go. Peace.